Alright, I'm here with an updated look at my PlayStation 1 collection. I know I don't usually do, back-to-back collection videos, but right now, for obvious reasons, I can't really go out looking for games, so the pickup video that would have probably been out this week is going to be on hold for a while. I have one little segment, filmed from before everything happened, but right now I'm kind of just trying to get by, obviously, so just gonna go with what we have. So we're getting, a Super Nintendo collection last week, PlayStation 1 collection this week. I really like the PlayStation 1. It's a really awesome system. I think some of the most influential and the most important games of all time were released on this system. And I think it's a fantastic system. I know a lot of people like to complain, oh, it hasn't aged too well. A lot of the games haven't, but there's still a lot of games that I think are fantastic and awesome. So I'll start with my long box games. These are games, I know a lot of people say that this was the later release games were in the long box. That's not correct. It was the early release games that were in the long box, so not sure where people are getting their information from because it is wrong. But we'll go into this now. First here is Alien Trilogy. Can't really put it in my shelf here. Alien Trilogy. Pretty old shooter. From the Alien license. Killik, the DNA Imperative. I believe this was a launch title. I'm not entirely sure. I got this one for cheap. I haven't tried it out. I believe that was a launch title, though. Rayman. I really liked the rebooted Rayman that they did. The two games they rebooted the series with. But man, that original Rayman game. Not so hot, at least in my opinion. I know, it looks nice and everything, but man, that level design, ooh, it's infuriating. Total Eclipse. This is another one I got for cheap and haven't tried. Something about the long box games I just have always thought was cool. Warhawk. I think I got these for like $1 each at a garage sale. There's different kinds of PlayStation long box games. There's also these ones in like a cardboard case. Need for Speed, or as it used to be called, Road and Track presents the Need for Speed. Yeah. And then also Wipeout, which Wipeout, cool franchise, still going. I think they released a VR one, which I could only imagine being kind of a nightmare to play. I'd probably get motion sick pretty fast, but Wipeout's pretty fun. Wipeout's a good series. So we'll go into my regular games now. Kind of give some thoughts if I have them. If I don't, there's probably not too much to say, but, And of course, if you have any questions about a certain game or anything, leave a comment. Always willing to answer those down below. This is a collection of Activision classic games for the Atari 2600. Quite the name, or you can just call it Activision Classics, like the back of the box does. It's always good to have these, compilation discs of all those old games. I had an Atari at one point, when I figured I need to focus my collecting a little bit, I kind of cut anything pre-NES out, because that's just not stuff that really speaks to me. But I can't say that these games are not important, and I cannot say that they're not fun. A lot of them are still pretty enjoyable from a gameplay perspective, and I think they're very important to the history of gaming. So, always good to have compilation collections like that. We got here Asteroids. Another Atari compilation. That one's all Activision Atari games. This is just Atari Anniversary Edition Redux. I'm trying to think what's on this one. Looks like you can't even read on the back of the box. You can use the PlayStation mouse though, which I do actually have. I got it at a flea market years ago. Got a cool peripheral. Here's the gem. Not really. Beyond the Beyond. Great name. Great name. This game's not so hot though. Can't really recommend this one. There's far better RPGs on the system. You don't have to play Beyond the Beyond, I promise. Here we have Bloody Roar 2. Bloody Roar is a fighting game series by Hudson. Kind kind of dead now. I mean, I'm sure Konami has the rights locked up, languishing somewhere like they have all their other games. Because Hudson was dissolved into Konami in general. But yeah, kind of cool, kind of a cool idea. There's during the whole fighting game craze of every company tried to make a fighting game, and to varying results. Although Bloody Roar is not too bad. Bloody Roar is pretty cool. BLASTO. If I don't say anything about a game, it's probably just because I got it for cheap at a garage sale or something and have yet to play it. This is a weird one I'd never seen before until I got this copy. Bomberman Fantasy Race? Was not familiar with this one. Published by Atlas. I don't know why Hudson didn't publish it himself, although Sony published Bloody Roar 2, so I have no idea. Kind of an interesting, pretty fun game, though. Another Bomberman title, again published by Atlas. I don't know what's going on here. Bomberman World. I know a lot of people more think of the N64 as the Bomberman system. You had some pretty solid Bomberman titles there. But, there's still some on the PlayStation. Oh, I guess really Saturn's considered the Bomberman system. You could get all that crazy multiplayer Bomberman action. So that's pretty cool. Got here Broken Sword, The Shadow of the Templars, and Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror. These are pretty cool, classic point-and-click adventure games. They also, the first game uses the mouse. I remember using, that was one of the times I tested my mouse and used it on that and played around that one for a while. Cool that they're on the PlayStation. Bust-a-Move 2, it's Bust-a-Move as you know it, but you got this horrifying, Clockwork Orange inspired cover. I don't know why they would use this as the cover. I guess it seems more like a threat. It's kind of like that. I guess they've never really got it right with Bust-a-Move covers, because there's also that one for, like, what is it, PS2? With the baby with the bubble gum in its mouth. Real bad. Missing the artwork, the manual for this one, which is extremely unfortunate. I got this at a garage sale, I think 2 years ago? 3 years ago, I think now, actually, for $5, but it didn't have the manual, which is really unfortunate. But it has everything else, the spine and everything. This is another game. This is a game that hasn't aged a day. And it's so funny, you can see old magazines that are talking about how, this game looked like crappy. It has 2D art. It looks like crap. Look at Castlevania 64. It looks so much better. And it's just like, oh my. That's just not aged well. That sentiment's not aged well, because Castlevania 64 looks so bad, and those games are so rough to go back to. And Castlevania Symphony of the Night's like, like it just came out last year. Chrono Cross. I've had this one for a while. I got it at Magfest 2014, so that's how long I've had it. Have not, properly sat down and tried to run through it. This is weird. I didn't know this one existed until I found this at a garage sale, I think, last year. Civilization 2. I remember, Sony was advertising when Civilization, 6 is the newest one, came to PS4. They're like, oh, it's the first time that Civilization's been on a Sony console, but that's not true. There was this. Unless this is a weird version or something they don't want to count. This, according to the box, does not support mouse, which is kind of a shame, because I can't imagine that's too pleasant to play with the PlayStation controller. But you never know. Contra Legacy of War. This game's pretty bad. I think this is kind of less common. This is just a single case version of it. Because I know there's like a dual case version that has, I think, 3D glasses with it. It's really bad game though, so. We got Crash Bandicoot here. I didn't really gain a huge appreciation of these games until I replayed them on the PS4, the remake trilogy, the Insane trilogy. And I had quite a bit of fun with them. The first game is kind of a pain though. You can definitely tell they improved from there, because this game is just brutally difficult in some sections. Some of them are a little bit, like the one with the bridge where you gotta bounce on the turtles, horrible. But, still a fun classic game overall. Definitely challenging. I feel like they really got it right with the second game, though. Crash Cortex Strikes Back. the lenticular cover there. And I also got the lenticular cover with Crash Warped. So this looks like a disaster on the camera. Which I think Warped is pretty fun too. I don't think people like it as much as 2, but I think it's still pretty fun. I think back in the day I thought it was my favorite because I think it was the one I played the most. But I think the second one's better after that, after revisiting all of them. Next we have Crash Bash. This is a pretty mediocre Crash Bandicoot themed party game. Kind of trying to go for that Mario Party, crowd. Crash Team Racing, I have not put as much time into this one, and this one I haven't played the remake of, but I haven't put as much time into this one. I can tell it's pretty fun, though. I know a lot of people really swear by this game as like the best kart racer. But I think it's a pretty fun game from what I've played, but I don't really see it as being like the best kart racer. Crusaders of Might and Magic. Dragon Seeds. Got that in a box from a garage sale that had a Sega Nomad in it, and then a couple Super Nintendo games like Donkey Kong Country. Here's another cool one. This is kind of a unique game. Pretty good shooter. Kind of really expensive now. Einhander, which is a Squaresoft shooter, like side-scrolling shooter. Pretty cool game. I got this actually on Facebook Marketplace. This lady had a PlayStation bundle with a PlayStation 1, like Mortal Kombat trilogy or something, another couple racing games, and then this game for $30. So I messaged her and picked it up that day because this is, over a $90 game, I'd say. I haven't checked it in a while, but not a cheap game by any means. So cool one to have in the collection. Pretty cool game. Probably one of the more overlooked Squaresoft games. I could talk forever on Final Fantasy VII. I think Final Fantasy VII is awesome. This is a game, I don't care what people say, I think this game still holds up immaculately. Sure, the character models are a little goofy looking, but everything, the pre-rendered backgrounds still look great, the music's still great, the combat's still great. I think Final Fantasy VII is awesome. I think it holds up fantastically, and it's still my favorite Final Fantasy. I know that's probably the normie answer, but I'm sorry, guys. And this is the version of the game with the weird, where is it? The weird typo with Masterpiece. The I somehow flew all the way up there. Don't know what happened there, but Final Fantasy VII is an all-time classic. So excited for the remake, even if it will take a million years for all of it to come out. It's weird though. I really like Final Fantasy. It's one of my favorite series, but I've never been able to get into Final Fantasy VIII. And I want to try it again, but I kind of hate the battle system. And then people might be more, because I know, Final Fantasy VIII is not the most beloved one, but people might also be more surprised to know that I also cannot get into Final Fantasy IX for the life of me. I don't know, I'm not huge into high fantasy, so the real high fantasy Final Fantasies aren't my favorites. I like the ones where they're more like steampunk and stuff like that, or like more, almost like modern fantasy, like 15, but I don't. And I'm not saying 9's bad. It's just I've never been able to sit down with it more than a few hours without wanting to give up. Something must be wrong with my brain. I don't know. This is a pretty cool package. Probably not the best way to play these games anymore. Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasy Chronicles. Kind of weird that Chrono Trigger is in the Final Fantasy Chronicles, but I'm not going to question it. Load times are kind of bad for these. So probably not the best way to play that one. This one's kind of cool. This is a really late release PlayStation 1 game. I believe, if memory serves me right, it came out in 2003. Can't see. Yeah, 2003 on the back. So PS1 was already out, or PS2 was already out for like 3 years at that point. This is Final Fantasy Origins. Let me get this, whatever that is, off. Final Fantasy Origins, which has Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on it. I can't for the life of me revisit Final Fantasy 1 and 2. I'm sorry. They're a little bit too primitive. I know, I don't think people really like 2 that much. But man, those games are primitive. Frogger. He's back. Frogger 2. He's back. Oh yeah. Gex. Gex, Enter the Gecko. Kind of one of those, memed upon mascots now. Gex games aren't bad per se. They're pretty decent platformers overall, from what I remember trying them out a few years ago for the first time when I started really getting into collecting. But I don't know, something about Gex is kind of a little bit meme worthy. I think this is how dated he is. I don't know, he's kind of doing like a Pierce Brosnan Bond parody on the cover. He gives the most, dated 90s jokes at this point. I mean, the plot of the game's him getting sucked into TV, if I remember right. Yeah. And it's a bunch of like TV and movie parodies. Appropriate to the time, but maybe not the most relevant now. But I don't know, something about Gex. I think they could bring back Gex and do, if they were self-aware with it, they could do something funny with it. Heart of Darkness. Ugh. Yeah, pass on that one. The Incredible Hulk, the Pantheon Saga. Forgot I had this one. This is a more recent garage sale acquisition, if I remember correctly. I think I got this game because it was at a store for 95 cents. The Italian Job from Rockstar. I believe this would have been made after the 60s movie and not the reboot they did with Jason Statham in the early thousands. I don't know. Yeah, Rockstar was doing, things that weren't just Grand Theft Auto at some point. Yeah, I guess they do Red Dead as well. But Jade Cocoon, kind of like a, I don't know, I don't want to say Pokemon ripoff. Pokemon inspired, monster collecting, stuff like that. I mean, if that sounds interesting, I wouldn't say it's fantastic or anything, but here's a good one. This is a real fun game. KLONOA, Door to Phantom Isle. I got this one at a Goodwill for, I think, $3. And this is a pretty fun game. You can also just get it on the PS3 store if you don't want to pay it's like about $170 game now, I think. If you don't want to pay that, you can get it on the PS3 store and the Vita store, I believe, with the PS1 Classics. I'd recommend playing it. It's a pretty fun game. It's a good time. Mega Man X5. I'm really big into classic Mega Man. I haven't actually played... I've played all the classic Mega Mans, but I haven't actually played much of the X games, actually past the first one. I have the X collection on the Switch, but I haven't got to through all of them yet. So I'm sure I'll play X5 eventually, but I have nothing to say about that specific one. Metal Gear Solid. I mean, Metal Gear Solid is really a turning point for video games. It's an incredibly important game. I'd say it's probably the most important PlayStation game. There's a lot of competition there, but yeah, I always have just appreciated the Metal Gear Solid 1 box art. I feel like it's just, I mean, it says everything you need to say right there. It's awesome. Yeah, I think Metal Gear Solid 1 is still a game that holds up tremendously. It's goofy, it's serious, it's classic. And also, no hate for the GameCube remake. I still think it's pretty good. Even if it's somehow even more goofy. Although I think really the main drawing point for me is these games being goofy. I think that's kind of Kojima's thing. Legend of Dragoon. There's been kind of some talks about like a remake for this one. I know it's been hinted at a little bit. Who knows if that'll actually happen. But would be cool. That could be a series that would probably benefit from seeing another chance. I know it was one of an older game that Shuhei Yoshida worked on. I know a lot of people know him. He was like the head of all the Sony studios worldwide for a while. I think he's doing like an indie game thing now at Sony. But he's still around, and yeah, it was one of older project he worked on back in the day. Pretty important figure for PlayStation fans, I'd say. Last World Jurassic Park. I think I just got this one because it has a cool lenticular cover. You can see about my mental functioning, how some of these purchases go down. Medieval. This is a fun game, and it's a really fun concept of like all the people, all these. I can't remember. It's the people believe that this guy is like the the great hero, even though they picked the wrong skeleton. So now they got to revive him to try to fight off evil, but he's like this loser skeleton and not the real hero. I believe that's the concept. They remade it for PS4 last year, which I'd like to try that remake because this game's pretty unique. I think it could be fun to see what the remake is like. I'm not sure why this game was not after Metal Gear Solid. Very strange. This is Metal Gear Solid VR missions, a collection of VR missions to do. Yeah, I don't. I got some of these are out of Metal Gear Solid's out of order, huh? Yeah, I didn't even notice that. Mega Man and Metal Gear Solid are out of order, huh? Strange. Yeah, there's been a lot of shuffling around of games, so if anything's out of order, I am sorry. I usually try to keep them in alphabetical order, but redoing the game room, having some of the stuff boxed up from moving a couple years ago. Monopoly. It is Monopoly on PlayStation. I think I end up with a Monopoly game on every console I own, it feels like. It just happens eventually. Omega Boost? Forget who did this game. It's a pretty big studio now who did it. Oh yeah, Polyphony, who's best known for like Gran Turismo now. They tried something that wasn't Gran Turismo and they got sent right back to the Gran Turismo gulag, I guess. Pac-Man World. I know a lot of people have more nostalgia for the second game. The second game is pretty fun. I don't really know a whole lot about this one. I know I've tried it before, but nothing really stood out to me that I remember from it. Another cool one that I think should get, another look. Parasite Eve. These were based off an old Japanese science fiction novel, to my knowledge. There's two of them. I also have Parasite Eve 2 I can bring in here. And they're a little rough around the edges. The second one's not super great from what I remember when I, with my time with it. But, could be a cool... I mean, the idea of like a horror RPG, which is what the first one is really interesting. And you don't really have too much like that. But, yeah, I mean, there was like the third birthday on PSP, which was technically the third game, but... I really think that they could bring this series back in a big way. And there's always been, like, every couple months it feels like there's some kind of quote-unquote leak that's going to happen. But I'll believe it when I see it. Okay. Pandemonium. Very, very strange game by Crystal Dynamics. And also, when I opened up my copy, I must have saved this. Someone's cheat codes were inside. I like to keep stuff like that. It's contextualizes some of this stuff. Even if I think, Pandemonium, what a weird game, who cares? Someone obviously cared. Although, well, actually, I was going to say, although they didn't care enough to sell that enough because they ended up selling it, but I got that in a lot that I believe I got from a girl whose aunt died and just passed all those games on to her, so kind of sad, but one of my biggest purchases, actually was my most I've paid for a game until I bought another game. This is Revelations Persona. I'm a big fan of the Persona series, so I wanted to collect all the games in the series. This is a harder to come by one. It's not very good. There's nothing about like modern Persona that you would see in it. Like, what we know of Persona 3, 4, and 5, there's nothing really in this game. This is like a first-person dungeon crawler that kind of has some concepts. You can see them kind of laying the groundwork of what this series wants to be about, but really didn't obviously find its footing until 3, 4, and 5. And actually, if you want to play the game, if you want to try it out, and you don't want to pay the egregious amount of money for a copy of it, you can get the PlayStation Classic, which I don't think is a necessarily very good unit, but you can get that thing for like $20-$30 now. And there's some good titles on there that are worth your time, but I don't think that system's a very good unit overall, though. I also have Persona 2, which I picked up. I still got to actually all the way play through both this and the other game, which you can only get on PSP or on Vita. But I still got to play through the duology of Persona 2. One of the things I have pretty high on my retro backlog, but who knows when I'm going to get to that. Pipe Dream 3D. It's kind of a fun one. Pocket Fighter. This was one. This is actually a game I had been looking for years. Very, very uncommon game. Very bizarre game. It's extremely Japanese. It's almost unbelievable that they released it in the extremely Japanese state that it's in. There's all these kind of weird, weird localization things where, like, if you fail a level, it says keep ambitious and just stuff like that. Yeah, really strange game. It's kind of, if you remember, like, that game Co-op you play in the browser, it's kind of like that, where you have the most annoying, annoying control setup possible, and you got to move this power shovel, this crane, and do all this stuff. It's so strange. It's so unique. Definitely try to track down a copy of this because it's really fun. You got to do bizarre stuff, like you got to get like curry out of pots and put it on the right dish, and whew, very fun game, very unique game. Cubert. I mean, I don't really know if there's much to say. It's kind of like a 3D version of Cubert. Trying to bring him back. Rayman 2, The Great Escape, which went for a 3D platformer instead of being a somewhat bad 2D platformer. I don't think no one mentions this one enough, though. Rayman Brain Games, which is a educational game with Rayman for young children. It's like they pretty much just took the Rayman engine almost and kind of tried to make it into a educational game with very, very weird results. Sorry for all the dust here. I'm trying to get rid of it. Putting in the regular fans of the channel know that we've been trying to put the ceiling and the lights in for a while, and they're actually up now for most of the rooms, so that's why the lighting's a little better. But caught some dust in the construction. Resident Evil. This is the less common variant that's not in the long box. I actually got a lot of my PlayStation games, including Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, from like a flea market lot for $25, which is that's pretty much where I started my PlayStation collection. Got like Metal Gear Solid in there too. Pretty much a lot of good ones. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil, the first one's kind of goofy, kind of weird. Resident Evil 2, I had never played it until the remake, and the remake's really awesome. I'd like to, go back properly and try, play the Resident Evil 2. But, kind of low on my list of priorities at the moment. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which is, getting remade, coming out in about a week or so? Yeah, I guess next week from, I guess today when I'm filming this, tomorrow when this goes up. Or less than a week after tomorrow it comes up. Looking forward to that remake. Rocket Powered Team Rocket Rescue. This game's pretty horrible. I really liked Rocket Power as a kid. I know a lot of people make fun of its kind of dated slang and all that, but man, I liked that show as a kid. And the game's horrible. I mean, it's really bad. But SimCity 2000. This actually has mouse support, so I mean, it's a better PC port than the Civilization that apparently doesn't. I really feel that, yeah, if there's a mouse for a system, you should definitely have something, some kind of mouse support. Skydiving Extreme. I always like these weird games. You can get these super cheap. I think I got this at the thrift store for $1, but I don't know, there's something about it. Like, why did this game have to exist? It's bizarre. I don't know. Street Fighter Alpha 3. Obviously, Street Fighter classic. I really like the pixel art that they had in the Alpha series, and in Street Fighter Third Strike as well. It looks fantastic to this day. Here we go. One of the peaks of gaming, the Space Jam video game. My case got cracked somehow. I gotta switch that out. Yeah, the Space Jam video game. Space Jam, I would say, is where cinema peaked. And the game, where gaming peaked, honestly. We got the old Neversoft Spider-Man game. I feel like we've gotten far better Spider-Man games since. I only ever played this game for the first time maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, so I wasn't too impressed. I'm sure it was great when it came out, but since I didn't grow up with this one, I was not too impressed. But obviously, the PS4 Spider-Man game is pretty amazing, so... Then we got a sequel, which I don't think Neversoft did. I think they were busy with Tony Hawk at this point. Enter Electro. Spin Jam. Don't have anything to say about that one. Here's another one that I got it this at like $1 at the thrift store. I'm like, okay, Putter Golf. Just another game. It's kind of like secret anime in a way. Like, oh, look, we try to have this generic cover, but on the back, there's kind of anime. Alright. Another game that still aged fantastically for what it is. Silent Hill, the original. So good. Silent Hill 1 and 2. I've never actually played 3. I'm huge on Silent Hill 1 and 2. I both think they're fantastic. Silent Hill 2 is probably one of my favorite games of all time. So good. It's a shame that this series is just kind of sitting somewhere locked up. And there were some rumors that ended up probably being fake, that it was coming back, but it's not coming back. Spyro? Spyro has always been pretty fun. Nothing bad to say about Spyro. That's for sure. We got also here Ripto's Rage. And a lenticular Year of the Dragon. Kind of a nightmare on the camera, but yeah, Spyro, those games are pretty fun. You know, I've not tried this one. I got this pretty cheap. Star Trek Invasion. I don't think there's ever been a Star Trek game that I've actually thought was decent. Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which is like a puzzle game with Street Fighter characters, as you can see by the front of the box. Got here another trilogy. Another kind of trilogy I'm surprised they never went back to. The Siphon Filter trilogy. 1, 2, and 3. Definitely not amazing by today's standards, but I could see why people liked him back in the day. I didn't grow up with a PlayStation 1, so a lot of the games that I played are from the lens of, you know, from within the last decades. But I can see why people like these games. I believe this is Sony Bend made these, who went on to do... They did the Vita Uncharted game, Golden Abyss, and they did Days Gone, which released last year on PlayStation 4. We got here as well. For some reason, I don't have the first one, but I got Tekken 2 and 3. I've always been more into Street Fighter. Tekken's pretty good. I'm not huge into fighting, but I've always been more into Street Fighter. But I gotta respect the classic Tekken's. Really solid. We got here Tetris Plus. It is a Tetris game. Kind of just speeding through some of these here. I don't want to make these videos too long. But Tiny Tank. This is a weird game. It's like a mascot game. Whether it's like a tank. It's alright. Got here the Tomb Raider trilogy. I don't have a whole lot to say about. I guess not trilogy. There's a bunch of them. I have all of them. I don't have a whole bunch to say about these, because I feel like I played these at a time where these games are obviously very important, but I played them at a time where I feel like I played better games. I did play Uncharted. I actually played the reboot Tomb Raider from the PS3 as well by the time that I tried these ones. And these games I didn't click with me because of that. I feel like, I don't want to say they aged poorly, but they're... maybe not the best to go back to, I'll say. 007, Tomorrow Never Dies. I know most people will think of GoldenEye as the James Bond game of that era. I'm kind of surprised they don't do too many more, you know, James Bond games. I know EA had that license for a while, and they put out some decent ones. I remember they even got Sean Connery for the one on the From Russia with Love game. But yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done anything with that IP. You know, no one's tried to do like the Batman Arkham of James Bond. But I digress on that. Twisted Metal 3. Twisted Metal is kind of a fun idea. The car combat genres kind of died out. You don't see anything car combat genre related anymore. Wild Arms 2. I've always heard that these games are really good. Really solid JRPGs, but I've never checked them out yet. I got this one for $1 at Goodwill, though. And then, finally, Xenogears. Which is another one I got at a Goodwill for, I think, maybe $3. And I guess not finally, because I got 2 more games here. Real quick. Lunar 1 and Lunar 2, both in their full sets. This one at the bottom is a box protector, so that's why there might be some reflection. You can see my shirt a little bit. I have not given these ones the full chance either, but they do seem pretty cool. So that is my PlayStation 1 collection. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what your favorite PS1 games are. Leave a like on the video because it really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Follow me on Twitter @ObjoGaming, and I'll see you next time.